Well, hello everybody, and welcome to season 2, episode 8 of the Drive to Dayton. We got the full roster back today. You know, it's money time. We got two fresh haircuts. As Roth pointed out, I got the button up on today, so I'm at least somewhat. I look somewhat presentable here, but we are in the stretch run here. Okay, we've got flying to the hoop behind us. We're heading towards the end of the January. The drawing is in the near future. Gentlemen, it is just about the best time of the year. We're approaching it.
I just can't believe how fast this season has flown by. I'm not sure if it's just me, but it seems like just last week I was at the All Ohio event and Ohio Valley event opening weekend. And, some teams are already 15, 16 games into their season already. It's just nuts.
For sure. Roth, you survived another week.
Yeah, survived did I ever. A lot of driving, a lot of basketball being watched, and like TJ said, we're in the stretch run. I wish there were like two or three of me on these Tuesday and Friday nights. Just so many games to pick from, so many teams I want to watch. So should be exciting time here in Ohio, and I've also spent a fair amount of time in Kentucky as well recently. So getting my eyes on players from both states.
Yeah, getting a little of that bluegrass in you down there, Roth. All right, let's jump into things here. I know we're got to be efficient today. So my opening question, we'll start with you, Roth. If you were allowed to pick the D2 Final Four that you want to watch in Dayton, who would you pick? Now, for those of you listening, Roth got to pick whoever he wanted, really. We weren't looking at geographical equality here. We were just picking what we would want to see in the Final Four in Dayton. So Roth, let us have it.
Yeah, I went with Lutheran West versus Lexington on one side and Kettering Alter versus Bishop Hartley. I think in that first game, you get a nice balance with Lutheran West having the seniors that they do at the guard position, Lexington with their size, with Braden Fogel and Elijah Hudson. I think that would be a very interesting battle. And then on the other side, Kettering Alter versus Bishop Hartley. Alter known for their shooting, offensive prowess. Hartley more of a defensive team with the Callaway brothers and Jeffrey Reynolds. And then, with Alter, you've got shooters like RJ Greer. Charlie Ewell can even stretch it out to the three-point line. Gavin Lean is another kid who has the talent to go off for 20, 25 points on any given night. It was tough to cut out some teams like Cincinnati, Wyoming, Trotwood Madison, Youngstown Ursuline, Shelby, and defending champ Akron Buchtel. But I just think this Final Four would have a nice mix of top Division I talent for the college level and also four teams that have been among the best in Division II so far this season. So that's who I went with.
Now, Roth, you did list a few teams here that you were it pains you to cut these teams off the list.
Yeah, especially the hometown Trotwood Madison Rams. I think in UD Arena, if they were able to make it to the Final Four, that atmosphere would be pretty special.
All right, TJ, I'm going to pose the same question to you, but I'm going to let you tackle Division I.
So Division I to me is a bit top heavy this year, where I think there are realistically about 5 to 6 teams that I could see winning it all. Where I feel like some other years, man, that list is a lot longer. But I kind of took a similar approach to Raw, where I looked for teams that just have dudes. Like on paper, we got length, athleticism, skill, shot making. My Final Four would be Garfield Heights, against Cincinnati Moeller, a team that I just saw recently this past weekend. And man, when Moeller is clicking like they were on Sunday, I think it's going to be a hard out for anybody to put them, to put them out of the tournament. They have this length, athleticism. They gave Menor everything they were looking for on Sunday. So I think that would just be a game of just a lot of talent. Both teams defensively have been really good this year. And then on the other side, this is a bit of a selfish decision by me. But a game that I didn't see this year that I regret not seeing was St. Ignatius against Reynoldsburg. Many people still talking about that game. I was in the hospitality room this past weekend, and some of the referees were talking about it. And that would be St. Ignatius against Reynoldsburg. It was a double overtime game. Two of arguably the most talented teams on paper in Division I. I'd love to see them running back at UD Arena.
TJ, you fooled me there. I thought you were going with I thought Ignatius was one of the other teams, but I thought you were going Centerville.
Ooh, yeah. I'm close on Centerville. They've had a bit of a weird season thus far, where I feel like they've had a lot of quality wins, but then some uncharacteristic losses as well. Kettering Fairmont is incredibly well coached, but that loss in conference play kind of took me back. Hoban, who's still kind of in the midst of getting back into a rhythm, they beat Centerville at home. So I think Centerville has the ability to make it back down to Dayton. Absolutely. I think they could honestly win it all still. But these are four teams that, as of right now, I think I'm a little more confident in, even though Centerville did happen to knock off Moeller at home in a close one a few weeks ago.
Let me ask you something, TJ. This isn't like in reference to this question. This time last year, January 23rd, I don't think at this point any of us saw Hoban winning.
Not at all. I know exactly where you were going with that.
I want to ask you that because there was a point, though, when you did think that this is a team. I don't know if you thought they could win it all, but I thought at some point you thought they could make a deep tournament run.
Yeah, absolutely. I picked them to come out of the region last year just because of how well they were playing down the stretch. And I think something very similar could happen this year. When you have a team who the majority of your roster is two sport guys who are coming right off of football straight into basketball, not much of a break or transition at all. It's tough, and they play a hell of a schedule on top of that. So, when people saw that they lost 3 or 4 games early on, it wasn't too much sweat off my back personally, just because exactly what you just mentioned about how they, what their route looked like a year ago. None of us saw that. If you would have told me that Hoban would be the Division I state champs a year ago, I would have thought you were crazy. I might have laughed you out of the building. But they figured it out, and I think it's just a matter of time before Sam Greer gets back into basketball shape. And he was the MVP of the state tournament a year ago. And when I saw him earlier in the season, you could tell he was still getting his basketball legs under him. Still kind of a little hungover from the football season. So, yeah, and Hoban picked up a pretty big win over Centerville not that long ago as well. So, seems like the wheels are starting to turn. They're starting to figure it out.
Do either of you guys see a team like that this year that maybe we're not thinking in the terms of a state championship run that could come out of nowhere like that again?
I think we're kind of already seeing it, aren't we? I wouldn't have guessed that Olentangy Orange would be 14-0 right now, or 12-0, or whatever their record is.
Me neither.
They're the only undefeated team in Central Ohio right now. They lost their 3 best players from a year ago, all graduated, went on to the scholarship level. Their JV team was undefeated last year. So I think this would be a solid team that could compete and possibly, reach a district final, yes. But I would not have guessed that this team would be rolling the way that they are.
I think Hilliard Bradley is a team that people need to watch out for. They had kind of a slow start to the season, injury to Ben Mergon. They played Olentangy Orange down to the wire. Game probably should have went into overtime with a foul call with like 2 seconds left. Orange was able to knock down free throws and win it. But what I was saying, we're recording on January 23rd. I didn't even see Hoban in person last year until January 24th. So tomorrow of last year was when I caught Hoban for the first time in person, and probably was a little bit of a reason why they were off of my radar so much, especially after their slow start to the season. But like TJ mentioned, I mean, they only lost one game the rest of the way, and that was at St. Vincent St. Mary last year. So there's still a lot of basketball to be played for a team to get hot at the end of January and into February as we get into the playoff draw.
All right, well, let me finish out this segment. Since it was my question, my rules, I'm one of the tri-hosts of the show. I did us a solid. We're going to be able to watch a little extra NCAA tournament because I have combined Division III and Division IV. All right. Now, there was a couple teams that pained me to leave out of these Final Fours, but I was looking strictly from entertainment value here. So I'm combining Division III and IV, and I'm making a semifinal out of it. First semifinal is Ottawa Glandorf against Richmond Heights. I think that game has great pace to it. Both of those teams want to play fast. I don't think if you're not familiar with OG, you may not have the right idea of how they play, and they want to play fast. They do. They want to force the tempo. They want to force the tempo. Richmond Heights obviously wants to do the same. And then my other semifinal is going to be Lutheran East against Warren JFK. And I picked this because Warren JFK's got 5 guys that are averaging double figures. And if you're going to beat Lutheran East, you got to have some guys that are able to bring Jesse out from under the bucket. So I feel like Warren JFK would be a really good matchup for Lutheran East. I think that would be a pretty entertaining game. So that would be my semifinal combined Division III, Division IV that I think would provide really good matchups and entertainment value. I don't know if the OHSA would want to see that, but I would. And since it's our show, that's who I'm picking.
And Warren JFK is a team that I probably need to, make a priority to go see at some point. I'm starting to get a few texts and calls about some of their seniors. And, junior Nick Bryan, I saw a year ago. I was really intrigued by. It seems like he's starting to, really blossom over there as well. So, yeah, shout out to Coach K. We had him on the show. Unfortunately, there was a mishap with that show that was not able to get posted, but we should probably try and bring him on again. Just to kind of do his.
That interview's in the abyss somewhere.
Yeah, that was a good conversation. We touched on a lot of the competitive balance, the new RPI system, and how that affects smaller schools in terms of scheduling. How you look for opponents. So, we'll try and get Coach K back on. But yeah, his team is definitely somebody I need to make a conscious effort to go get eyes on at some point.
And speaking of guys we need to get on this show, I mean, is there any is there any reason we don't get Sonny Johnson on this show at some point? I mean, we might have to carve out about an hour for him, but
we have to.
Yeah, so that'll be a lot of laughs. All right, let's jump into last week's recap. So we'll do the Battle of the Berkeys second because I know Roth, you were there, and then TJ, you were there on Sunday. But TJ, I want to get your thoughts on the play-by-play classic in at Reynoldsburg.
Yeah, so it was a 5-game event. Nice blend for me in terms of teams that I had already seen, but then also a few teams that I hadn't seen yet. After Centric picked up a huge win over Pick Central in the opening game of the event. And shout out to Coach Bates and company. This won't be the first time I mention them on the show today. Spoiler alert. I thought his group for a 12 p.m. game, I know that's a bit of a weird time for kids to be playing. They're so accustomed to, playing in front of bigger crowds at night, after a school day. So for those guys to wake up, go to the gym and compete with the level of urgency that they had, it was refreshing to see. Tyler Kropp, I mean, speaking of another kid that we've talked about here on the show, he had 32 points and about 15 rebounds in a win over Amani Christian on a Western PA. And that Alumni Liberty team is another team that you want to talk about somebody that can make a run. I think that team is absolutely good enough to make a district final, to beat somebody possibly. And they've had a lot of close games with a lot of teams that we've had in that mix as far as contentions to get out of Central Ohio. And they had a nice couple sophomores, juniors, a few that came off the bench that were intriguing. I think that group is, a guard away from being really, really good next year as well. Garfield Heights played Reynoldsburg. Reynoldsburg obviously was coming off of a huge emotional win over Pick Central the night before. I know, Stubbs, you were at that game, and the videos I saw, that environment just looked absolutely nuts. But Garfield Heights was defensively has been on another level all season long. I think C.J. Little is a kid who's not going to stuff the stat sheet from a points standpoint, but man, it makes a ton of winning plays, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and just initiates so much for them. And I don't know what DeAndre Jones was on this weekend, but man, that kid, he was like a bat out of hell on Saturday. From the opening tip, I mean, that kid was everywhere. Weak side tip-ins, blocks, rebounding out of his area, sprinting down the floor, running rim to rim. That Garfield Heights team is fun. And I got my first look at Olentangy Orange as well. And it was interesting when they walked out, they're warming up. They don't necessarily pass the eye test, right? They're not a team that when you look at them, you'd be like, man, this team looks like they should be the only undefeated team left in Central Ohio. But shout out to Coach Kalo, and they did a great job over there. Junior Devin Brown is a kid that I was looking forward to seeing all season. Wanted to go down and catch him a few weeks ago, but unfortunately I got sick and it didn't work out. But I caught him on probably one of the better games he's had this season against Walnut Ridge. And Olentangy Orange was able to pull away in the second half. Freshman Deion Johnson was good for Walnut Ridge. It was nice to see him, being one of the more talented underclassmen in Ohio, kind of find a rhythm, get his footing under him, and have a good game against such a quality team. And then the last game of the night was Westerville North against Akron Buchtel, the defending Division II state champs. Westerville North ended up winning by 16 points. I left at halftime of that game. When I left, it felt like Westerville North was going to win. They just had all the momentum, and they were just kind of in control of the game, through the first 16 minutes that I saw.
Yeah, that was some interesting matchups there. You referenced, I was at the Pick Central Reynoldsburg game on Friday, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago when there's, dislike, a healthy dislike. Those are the types of environments that you get. Like, it was fun. It was packed. I thought every player on the court handled themselves very well for that type of environment. So kudos to them. I mean, we had a little mishap in the stands. All things considered, with that type of environment, it wasn't that bad. But it was just a great high school basketball game. I mean, the play on the floor was very good, but the crowd and the atmosphere makes athletic events.
And I feel like we haven't had too many games this year that I've been to where the atmosphere and the environment was like that.
No, it was nuts.
It seems like people who are going to these games, I don't know if they're just more so like casual fans who just enjoy basketball.
Yep.
But when I look up into the stands, it's just a lot of people just kind of sitting there. There's not much energy. It's almost like people were watching a funeral.
Yep.
So it's refreshing to hear that, that type of game. And I'm assuming they play another time around, right?
They do. They close the season together. That will be at the Summit campus over there in Reynoldsburg. But man, I just don't know if you'll be able to duplicate that one. I mean, I feel like, if you look on Reynoldsburg is a better team on paper, for sure. But if you look at the way the game was played, I mean, that's a game that Central would love to have back. That last like 2-3 minutes of regulation that they just couldn't close the deal. And credit Reynoldsburg for hitting huge shots. Jordan Fisher, the junior, was unbelievable all night. I think he ended up with 34 points. Shot an incredible efficiency. The sophomore, Jordy Bowens, was really good on the inside. And Jawan Turner, that offensively, that was one of the better performances I've seen from him in his career at Pick Central. And he's played a ton of games at Pick Central. The one thing that you cannot overstate with him is, and I talked with Eric about this, you will feel the effects of him graduating with just how much he handles the ball in pressure situations. And he's got that thing on a string. He is so good against heavy ball pressure with the basketball. And I was just glad that he got, to reap some of the benefits offensively the other night. He played really, really well. I think he ended up with 25. Great game. Kudos to Reynoldsburg for getting that W. And, Law of Averages said they were going to have to win one of those overtime games eventually. They've been in quite a few of them. So just a really good high school basketball game. And as three guys that just love ball, I mean, you can't ask for any more than that. All right, let's jump into the battle at the Berkey up in Smithville High School. Roth, you were there on Saturday for the fun and festivities.
Yeah, I was. The Triway versus Indian Lake game was definitely the highlight of the first game. Braden Holt with 37 points, all came in the first 3 quarters. He was making tough shot after tough shot. Plays with good pace for a sophomore. On the Indian Lake side, I thought freshman Brody Reisinger was impressive. 6'2" wing guard, scored in transition off some steals, hit shots off the catch. Solid athlete, strong kid for a freshman. He looks like a multi-sport stud. Toledo Christian kind of rolled over Dalton, but their notable game this weekend was on Friday when Toledo Christian went to Emmanuel Christian and got a conference win on the road. And then Berlin Highland, that's another team that I want to shout out. They actually lost on Friday night. Then the next day, come out and just take it to Wayne Trace. I thought Sammy Detweiler was impressive shooting it from 3-point range. And Highland defensively just made Brooks Lockoff work for anything he even attempted at the rim. Really did a great job playing help side defense and making everything difficult, holding Wayne Trace under 40 points. And then finally, I want to shout out Trey Sagister from Tri-Village. They haven't played a very tough schedule so far this season, but they rolled over host Smithville. And Sagister is averaging almost 23 points per game this season and is shooting 46% on almost 100 3-point attempts. So he's one of the top scorers among all underclassmen in the state. He's grown about 2 to 3 inches since the last time I saw him. He was like 5'10", 5'11". Now he's like 6'1", 6'2". So this is a Tri-Village team that has a big game late in the year against Preble Shawnee that will likely determine the conference title race. And they only have 1 loss right now. So you could see a pair of 20-win teams going at it when Preble Shawnee takes on Tri-Village. I think it's the last game of the regular season for those teams.
Yeah, I think, Trey not only grew like vertically, but I think football has helped him a ton as well. He had a really good season for Tri-Village on the football field too. So Sunday, TJ, you were in attendance.
Yeah, me and Roth was there the whole weekend. I showed up on Sunday. Trying to think, the first game we saw Cardinal Mooney against Chippewa. Cardinal Mooney was able to pull away late in a running clock win. And Stubbs was, you've been really high on Cardinal Mooney in our group chat, and I have to say they are extremely well coached. It was nice to see a team who just passed the ball as much as they did, and they were just so unselfish. There were a number of opportunities where I thought kids could have taken shots or attacked the rim, and the first thing on their mind was to make that extra pass or to look for where their teammates were out on the floor. And that's just, to me, something you don't see very often. Next game up was Glen Oak against North Farmington. So this was a game I was really intrigued by. North Farmington being one of the top 5 teams in Michigan this year. I believe they play in the largest school division in Michigan. And, I mean, they feature 2 Division I guys in Tyler Spratt and Landon Williams. They also have a big 6'8" senior in Dylan Smith. So this was a team on paper that has a lot of talent. And honestly, I felt like Glen Oak lost that game down the stretch more so than North Farmington won. But it was a really quality game. Senior Corey Lipkins from Glen Oak had a team high 17 points. One of his more efficient games of the season so far. And that's a team to keep an eye on is Glen Oak. They play in the Federal League. They play against an absolute gauntlet of a conference schedule. And they see so many different types of teams throughout the year. I wouldn't be surprised to see Glen Oak, win a district and, really knock off some teams they probably have no business beating. Next up was the Moeller and Menor game. It's probably the one game on the slate of the entire weekend that I was most looking forward to. Mostly because when I saw Moeller, they weren't at full strength. They were missing both Kingston Land and A.J. McBride, 2 Division I recruits. And they still picked up a pretty big win at St. V early in the season. And I hadn't seen Menor yet this year. So it was me finally seeing Menor and also getting eyes on a 100% Moeller. And, man, it was a game going into it where I thought it was going to be a game of pace, right? Whoever controlled the pace was going to win the game. Moeller looks to kind of keep the game in the 40s, maybe the 50s, where Menor's happy if the game's 93-92. And to my surprise, Moeller just came out and ran with them. And they have the athletes, they have the length, and I think they really bothered Menor. At one point throughout the game, I looked over at Roth and I said, when was the last time, Menor touched the paint? It felt like it had been about 5 or 6 minutes since they've gotten anything going towards the rim. But I think that's just a credit to Moeller and how deep they are. And to think they picked up such a big win without their starting point guard, Roman Mason, who got suspended, unfortunately, in the St. X game on Friday, which is a whole different conversation. Maybe we touch on that later in the show. But, yeah, so I was absolutely impressed with Moeller, and they look like a team that could easily win a state championship this year. After that, I want to say it was North
Prep Lake Catholic.
Oh, it was Harvest Prep Lake Catholic. That was a game that a bit helter-skelter in terms of the pace. It just felt like just transition opportunity after transition opportunity, turnover here, loose ball here, broken play here. But Harvest Prep had a little bit too much. They were able to pull away down the stretch. And quite possibly one of the more entertaining games of the day, which caught me by surprise, was Fairview, which is Roth's alma mater, against Johnstown Northridge. I was impressed with Fairview's sophomores and senior Carter Maloney from Northridge. Man, I was trying to rack my brain earlier and think of the last time I saw a kid score 50 or more points in a game, and it's been a little while. But, yeah, Carter Maloney finished with 53 points. I believe he had 20 made free throws, most of which kind of came down the stretch, and there were a few technicals in there as well. But, man, he made some high-level shots. Whether he was driving right, stop on a dime, hang, pull up, catch and shoot, whether it was off movement. He was a kid who looked like one of the better available seniors in Ohio. And lastly, it was the Malvern against Akron East, which was a bit of a rout, but it was nice to see Malvern up against a team that could kind of match their athleticism and their pressure. You could tell early on that Malvern wasn't quite used to seeing teams that could pick up and really disrupt them with their length and their athleticism. But ultimately, Malvern just had a little bit too much. Senior J. Allen Barino, a kid we mentioned a few weeks ago on the show, as somebody we kind of all wanted to get eyes on at some point. And, man, that kid is really, really intriguing to me. Legit 6'2", maybe 6'3", got a great frame, good length, and just real natural instincts on the defensive end. I think by halftime, that kid probably had 4 or 5 steals, 3 or 4 deflections, and his ability to just get to the paint and make decisions with the ball in his hands, he was really impressive. That's a team, I believe they're going to match up with Berlin Highland later in the year at the IBC Showcase.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's, I think it's the number 1 team on this side, it's the number 1 team on that side. So that's a game I might not be in attendance for, but I will be closely following how that turns out. But shout out to Coach Corey Kaufman over at Smithville. I think this was the 3rd year of the battle at the Berkey, and it seems to have progressively gotten better each year. He has a nice blend of, kind of those big name matchups with a few off-the-path teams that you don't normally get to see throughout the year, or at least I don't. So I'm looking forward to just the growth of this event. To any high school coaches who are listening or watching, I would highly recommend reaching out to Coach Kaufman. He does a phenomenal job, provided, media and coaches with great hospitality. And it's an event that I'm going to probably try to make a staple of mine moving forward.
Yep. Definitely an event that is growing over the course of its 3 years. Do we have anything else for the good of the order on the recap? I do want to shout out, and this is still weird to say, Tim Casey, now the New Albany head coach.
It's so weird seeing him in that New Albany.
Yeah, he'll always be a golden bear to me. 500th win for Tim Casey. He's a ball coach. Tim Casey's a ball coach. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to New Albany, having a really good season under Casey in his first year. All right, let's move on to the players and teams of the week. Roth, we'll start with your player of the week.
My player of the week is Kent Hairston from Central Crossing. Hairston scored a school record 43 points in a win over Groveport Madison over the weekend. Hairston is like a 6'5" wing who can shoot it. The lefty's pretty long, and watch the highlights posted by, I believe it was 270 Hoops. You just see a lot of transition buckets, couple spot up 3-pointers, his ability to use his length at the rim. He's a kid who I haven't seen since around a year ago last year. So he's someone that I'll be curious to get my eyes on if I can during the grassroots season, see how he's progressed as a player. So Kent Hairston for Central Crossing, my player of the week.
TJ.
I went with a kid I mentioned earlier in the show, and that's Devin Brown. I'm not sure there's quite a kid who has improved their stock this season than Devin has, and that's regardless of class. But he had a dominant performance on Saturday against Walnut Ridge. Started off 4 for 4 from the 3-point line. And like as Coach Kalo, explained to me and described him, I mean, he's just like a utility knife. The kid does a little bit of everything at 6'6". He's got length and a good frame. He was able to, whether it was initiate offense, spot up on the perimeter, post up on duck-ins. The kid touches a lot of bases, checks off a lot of boxes. He's currently averaging 12 points a game, 6 rebounds, and was shooting a whopping 51.5% from 3. So huge shout out to Devin Brown, who picked up 2 offers from Toledo and OU, both of which were his first, scholarship offers.
Finally, I'm going to go with the guy you guys mentioned from the Battle of the Berkey. I'm going to go with Carter Maloney from Northridge. I feel like a guy that drops 53 points deserves to be on our list for the week. He had 53 points and an 86-78 win over the Fighting Ross of Fairview. And then he had a 19-point performance in a Friday win over Utica. Northridge is now 11-3 on the season. All right.
I love Coach Barry over at Fairview. Really nice guy, easy to talk to. So a part of me feels bad for saying this, but seeing somebody drop 50 on Rob's alma mater just makes me so happy. Like,
if I was out there, it wouldn't have happened.
I had about an hour drive back from Smithville, and I just had the biggest smile on my face. Music turned up. So yeah, thanks, Carter. You're appreciated over here.
The only thing better would have been...
I had a 3-hour drive back, and I stopped at Swenson's.
The only thing better is if he would have held up one of them little signs that like Joel Embiid had last 53. Might get that for Roth for Christmas.
That would have been.
You'll have to wait 11 months.
That would have been my profile picture this entire week on Twitter, probably.
Oh, it's been fantastic. All right, TJ, who was your team of the week?
I mentioned them earlier as well, but I went with Columbus Afrocentric. They won 4 of their last 5, including 2 big wins over Westerville South and Pig Central. And this was a team that started off the year really rough, right? Started off 1-5, which is, kind of expected considering how much they lost in last year's senior class. Mm-hmm. And then they take another blow with starting point guard LaRon Fuller, who I believe didn't even come out for the team this season. So to see what Coach Bates has done at Afrocentric, and he's getting the most out of that group. And shout out to senior Cortez Freeman. He was really good in the Pig Central game. I believe he finished with about 22, 23 points. So yeah, it was just nice to see anyone who knows Coach Bates, man, just a phenomenal guy. So I'm always happy to see his teams do well.
For sure. Roth, what do we got?
Yeah, I went with Cincinnati Moeller. TJ mentioned it earlier, but they really made Menor look uncomfortable with their length and athleticism defensively. They're a team that shares the basketball and spreads the wealth offensively. They don't average a ton of points, but you've got Alex Kazanecki, who just received his first Division I offer with 13.2 points a game to lead the way. Noah George at 9, Eric Mahaffey at 9, AJ McBride at 5, Kingston Land at 5, Kyle Havens at 5, Roman Mason at 5, Brady France at 4. So you just got a lot of guys who can come in, make plays, impact the game. And that's what they did against Menor. Menor's a team that wants to get up and down the court. And Moeller scored their most points of the season at 85 on Sunday at the Battle at the Berkey. And they also got a win on Friday at conference rival St. Xavier, 56-46. And amazingly, Moeller is 38-1 in their last 39 games against St. Xavier, a remarkable mark for a conference rivalry. So Moeller is my team of the week after they got those 2 impressive wins.
Yeah, and the cool thing about those 2 teams that you just mentioned, and Afrocentric and Moeller, both of their head coaches are avid listeners of the Drive to Dayton. So shout out Coach Bates, Coach Kramer, 2 of the best in the business. My team of the week is Toledo Christian. They've had a pretty successful week. It started at the MLK Classic. They beat Minster. They get a huge road win at Emmanuel Christian. That was a conference win. And then they beat Dalton at the Battle of the Berkey. That's 8 straight wins now for Toledo Christian. Their only loss on the year was, I think, like a 5-point game, maybe 7-point game to Maumee Valley Country Day. Tyler Boris's team, Toledo Christian, definitely a team to keep an eye on in Division 4. All right, let's wrap that up. Let's go to our games of the week. And Roth, why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, well, we got 2 games tonight, so they'll have already been played by the time you guys hear this. With Western Hills at Trotwood Madison, 2 teams that are going to like to get up and down the court. Should be a high-scoring game. And then I went with Westerville North at Delaware Hayes. This was a game that went down to the wire in Westerville. Delaware Hayes was a team me and TJ both saw on Friday night get a win over Big Walnut. They've got a pair of Division I recruits in Ohio commit Jesse Burris and also junior Landon Vanderwalker on their front court, while Westerville North is more led by their guards, Ty Perkins and Micah Young. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out. You know, Delaware Hayes jumped out to a huge lead the first time these two teams played and really held on at the end, winning, I think, by only 1 point. So this rematch should be highly competitive as well. And then the last game, Lutheran East at St. Ignatius. Lutheran East took a tough loss this weekend. They were shorthanded, missing a couple of their star players, but they're going to go to St. Ignatius. The Wildcats were the first team to defeat Lutheran West over the weekend. They went into their building and got a win. These are two of the top teams in Northeast Ohio. It should be an electric atmosphere at St. Ignatius. So I think that is primetime viewing on a Friday night between two teams that we've talked about plenty on this show and seen plenty at different all-day events, but still a big-time game for basketball fans in Northeast Ohio on Friday night.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Lutheran East was down a few starters. Senior Jesse McCullough didn't play, as well as fellow senior Ronald Taylor. But man, they might have been missing the biggest superstar of all, man, with athletic director and assistant coach Anthony Jones not being there, man. That's Mr. Bring the Energy. So yeah, tough blow for Lutheran East, but obviously, given the circumstances, not too bad. My games of the week, I'm starting up in Northeast Ohio. So Strongsville at Menor. It should be a really fun one. I believe that's tonight as well. Menor won the first game 75-73, and that's also Strongsville's only loss on the season. They're sitting at 11-1. Definitely a team that I kind of had a bit of low expectations, or not really any expectations at all coming into the season, and that's just me just being unfamiliar with what they brought back from a year ago. I know they lost the senior guard Wampasek last year. So yeah, for them to be at 11-1, pretty impressive. Obviously, tonight's game is going to be very important as far as the league standings go. A game that I'm intrigued by, just because these two schools are so close to each other, is Gilmore Academy and Hawken. I know it's like a bit of a rivalry there. And that's a game I actually might slide over to. I think it's on Saturday, so I may be in attendance for that. And then lastly, I went with the GCL matchup with St. X and Outer. Both of them are 1-1 in the conference so far. And, I mean, the loser of this game pretty much puts themselves out of contention. So the winner will have a chance to at least get a share if they can win out, and then also split with Moeller. So those would be my 3 games to watch this week.
Yeah, both of those teams have lost to Moeller on the season, so that should be an interesting game. I'm going to start with Tuesday, which would be tonight. You'll see this tomorrow. Antwerp against Wayne Trace. Both of these teams have been throttled pretty good in the last couple of weeks. Rushi got Antwerp, and as Roth mentioned, Highland beat up on Wayne Trace. So both of these teams, conference game, need a big win here. Friday night, we've got North Adams at undefeated Fairfield. That's a game I'm going to be monitoring. We also got South Webster at Wheelersburg. Wheelersburg just knocked off Minford. And then on Saturday, we got Troy Christian at Tri-Village. That's an intriguing game. And then Delphi St. John's at a red-hot Spencerville team on Saturday as well. So those are my games that I'm going to be monitoring throughout the week. All right, gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time to start buying and selling. All right, well, let's start with this one. I'll start out with a softball for you. People are making too big of a deal out of the RPI.
I'm buying. I think the RPI is bad? Yes. Do I think people are making too much of a big deal about how bad it is? Also, yes. And my whole thing with it is this: regardless of where teams get seated, high school coaches know who's good and who's not good. They still get to place themselves on the line. You might get some, weird first or second round matchups that, should probably happen maybe in the semis. But I think it's all going to play itself out. Coaches are going to know who to avoid, who they want to play, regardless of kind of how the seeding shakes out. So it's going to be interesting, though. If I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to come on here and admit it. But I definitely think we're making a bit too much of a big deal out of this.
I'm also buying it for the sole reason, like TJ said, that coaches are going to get to pick who they want to attack. So you might see some teams that are seeded highly that might not have very many quality wins. You might see some teams attack them in the tournament draw. If teams were seeded NCAA bracket style, how football does it, where one plays 16, two plays 15, three plays 14, the concerns about the RPI rankings would be 100% valid. However, because teams can choose who they want to play, I don't think it is as big a deal as some people are making it out to be. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, good. I mean, definitely great points with the, placing yourself on the bracket opposed to being put on there by the seed you are, which would make a huge difference, obviously.
Absolutely.
I was doing, I did Division 4, and I think I told Roth, or maybe both of you this. When you look at Division 4, 9 of the top 10 teams in Max Prep are the same as they are in Martin RPI. The only team that is not in the top 10 of Max Preps that is in Martin RPI top 10 in Division 4 is obviously Richmond Heights. Fairfield is in the top 10 in Max Preps. They're 13th in Martin RPI. So, I mean, 9 out of 10 being the same in the top 10. I mean, obviously Richmond Heights is a major, miss in the top 10. But I just think ultimately what needs tweaked is there needs to be a point value for Division 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like they do in football. So the wins aren't counting the same based off of, if I beat a Division 1, it's the same as a Division 4. All those divisions should have a different point value for wins. Other than that, I don't really have a whole lot of gripes towards it, but good stuff, gentlemen. All right. This will be Drew Joyce's last year as head coach at Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's, by his choice.
Yeah, I'm going to sell. Coach Joyce is, for those of you who have ever met him, got to have a conversation with him, very much like a stoic guy, very serious about what he does, and obviously has had a lot of success doing so. I know he likes to golf, but I don't know if there's enough golfing in Northeast Ohio to keep that guy off the sidelines for a couple more years. So I think we get probably maybe 2 to 3 more years out of Coach Joyce before he hangs him up.
Roth, same thing?
Yeah, I mean, you look at their team this year, a lot of their best players, and I think 4 of their 5 starters are either sophomores or juniors. This is a program that I think next year, 2 years from now, could be right back in the mix to make it to a Final Four. And I'm pretty sure if we expand to 7 divisions, which is crazy, they would be Division 3 with, I think, Lutheran West, Louisville, and Sandusky. So they would be right back in the state title mix there. I even think if you keep them in Division 1, stay at 4 divisions, that St. V could have a puncher's chance either next year or the year after with all their young talent on the roster. So I think you're going to see one more run by Drew Joyce, either with a district title or an appearance at Dayton before he decides it's time to hang him up.
All right. Well, with that being said, then my next one is kind of along the same lines. Carl Kramer at Cincinnati Moeller. Are you taking less than 3 years or more than 3 years left with the Crusaders?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. I am going to go with my gut, though. I'm going to say less than 3 years. Coach Kramer has been there longer than I feel like I've been alive sometimes. I'd have to do the math on that.
Yeah, I think
But yeah,
1990, I think, was his first year.
which is the year I was born.
Yep.
So, yeah, kudos to him. Phenomenal guy. I've gotten a chance to have some conversations with him over the last few seasons. Easy to talk to. Like I said, I enjoy watching his teams, but I would say less than 3 years if got into my head.
I agree with this. With the way you worded it, Stubbs,
Yeah, it was poorly.
I was like,
poorly worded.
yeah, I said bye because I also think it's going to be less than 3 years remaining. And TJ said sell, and we had the same opinion. We just didn't know whether we were buying or selling the take.
Well, the host was terribly worded. Yeah, I mean this one will be similar to Saban. It just kind of feels like Saban with Kramer. It'll be a sad day when him and Joyce are moving on to different things in life. All right, last one here. I don't know if this is. Let me word this correctly. All right, so you're gonna buy one, you're gonna sell one, you're gonna hang on to one. You're just not letting the stock go yet. And then one you would have never purchased to begin with. Okay? Here's 4 teams. Findlay, Wyoming, Marymount, and Monroe Central. Why did I pick these teams? Findlay, Wyoming, and Marymount are all in the top 5 in their respective divisions in Martin RPI. Monroe Central is in the top 10. I think they're maybe 8, 9, somewhere around there in Division 4 in Martin RPI. Buy one, sell one, hang on to one, you're not sure yet. Would never purchase it.
So I am going to buy stock on Cincinnati, Wyoming. It's a team I got to see it's a team I got to see quite a few times over the summer. They have a plethora of really talented sophomores, a team that's currently still undefeated to my knowledge.
Yep.
A team that is going to have a chance to make a run this year and honestly the next 2 years. So I'm going to buy that stock now while it's maybe a little low. And then I think teams people are going to start kind of coming around the next few years. I'm going to hang on to Findlay. I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued by Findlay. And I think I'll have a more clear idea of where I sit with them later on. I'm going to say mid-February. I'll be out at the Ottawa Glandorf event, and they play Shelby. So that should be a really good game, one that I think could go either way. So I'm going to hang on to the Findlay, not quite there yet. I'm going to sell my Marymount stock, and I would not purchase Monroe Central. That's where I'm at.
Roth?
Okay, so we had I thought we were going to go all 4 the same in the middle there. I swapped. I wouldn't purchase Marymount stock, and then I would sell Monroe Central stock because it's at an all-time high right now. Division 4 East District. I saw a team in the Division 4 East District this weekend that I know Stubbs loves. Is it Tucker Howell for Monroe Central?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, so he could prove me wrong, but I find it hard to believe that Berlin Highland is going out in the district. So I would be selling any Monroe Central stock you have right now before you see the calendar and go, they got to go through Highland to win the district. Try and get out early.
Love it, gentlemen. That's the best thing about you. I can give you guys any teams, and we can run with it. All right,
That's fun. I like that one. We should keep doing that.
Let's close the show with our alumni spotlight. And TJ, man, you hit the nail on the head with this. I love this I love this part of the show. It's just so hard to find, to go through and see who's doing what, especially Division One for sure. Roth, you threw me a slider this week in your Division One. I didn't see that one coming. You froze me. Bat on the shoulder. Never even took it off. What did you have for us in Division One this week?
Yeah, so I'll get started here. In Division One, I went with JC Sheldon from Dublin Kaufman. She plays for Ohio State. Boys basketball fans will know her brother AJ Sheldon, who also went to Dublin Kaufman and plays at OU. But on Sunday at the Battle at the Berkey, I was locked in during the fourth quarter of the Ohio State versus Iowa game. It broke a record for most watched regular season game for women's basketball since 2010. It was in front of a sold-out Schottenstein Center. Sheldon had some huge buckets in the fourth quarter and overtime to get the victory, was efficient from the floor, passed the ball at a high level. Just a great game to watch on both sides. And it was the Division I college basketball game that I watched the most of this weekend. So big time environment in Columbus. Great to see Ohio State get the win. Also great to see Caitlin Clark. She is phenomenal to watch on television. So that was really the college basketball story in the state of Ohio that I thought captured my attention the most this week. So I wanted to shout out JC Sheldon and the Ohio State women's basketball team. And then my small college player, I went with Henry Hinkle from Olentangy Liberty. He's at Ohio Wesleyan. He was a 1,000-point scorer at Olentangy Liberty and now an 1,000-point scorer at the college level. He scored 32 points in a win over Wabash earlier this month. Is also a two-time NCAC Player of the Week this season. So congrats to Henry Hinkle. 1,000 points for his collegiate career. One of the best point guards in Division III in the Midwest.
For my Division I spotlight, I went with a kid who I think has a really cool and unique story. Most of the time when we hear about the transfer portal, it tends to, be surrounded by, or associated with a negative connotation. But I'm going with a guy named Sean Moore. He was a Reynoldsburg grad. I believe that was in 2020. He went to St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a Division II in New York. A kid who wasn't really recruited much out of high school. He didn't really have his, pick of the litter in terms of scholarship opportunities, but went to St. Thomas, got better. His head coach left, took a Division I job at Fairleigh Dickinson. He joined him, and he is having a stellar year. Just last week in a win over St. Francis, PA, Sean had a team high 23 points, shot 10 of 19 from the field, grabbed 8 rebounds. He's currently averaging about 12 points a game, shooting 41% from the field. So just a cool story of a kid who wasn't really talked about much in high school. We all kind of acknowledged he was a good player, but the guy just continued to get better and better. So I love stories like that. Where kids just kind of take a chance, bet on themselves. And it was awesome that his head coach, had as much trust in him, to think that he could make that jump from Division II and Division I. And it's been pretty seamless so far. And for my small college spotlight, I'm doing a Stubbs, man. I'm stealing Stubbs' signature move, his little baseline fadeaway jumper. I'm going with the entire Walsh Cavaliers. So this is a team that currently sits at 12-3 overall. They're 6-3 in the conference. They are currently on a 7-game winning streak. Akron transfer Kobe Mitchell has been big time this year. We talked about him in the show a few weeks ago, averaging 19 points a game. Garrison Keesley, who's one of my favorite small college guys to watch, not too far behind at 14 points. and is a walking triple-double type of threat. But shout out to Zach Odo, who's another kid who's a former teammate of Keesler at Uniontown Green. Coach Kinsley at Green, man, is a sneaky dude. His teams always play hard. They play the right way. And his kids tend to be more successful in college than people tend to give them credit for. So shout out to Walsh and those trio of guys. Freshman Aiden Carter has had a contribution as well. A really talented kid out of Northwest Ohio. So, yeah, there's my picks. Sean Moore of Fairleigh Dickinson and the Walsh men's basketball team in the GMAC.
TJ, you weren't here last week for the show, but I think that coach at Green was a guy who I thought of for our introductory question that Stubbs had, which was which coach wins the most games with less talent on the floor. And I think he is a prime example of a coach who does more with less and figures out ways to win games even when he doesn't have the most talented teams. And when he has guys like Keesler or Caleb Martin, finds ways to win conference titles, win district titles. So he's one of the best up in Northeast Ohio to do it.
It seems like every year his team, like let's say they get picked to finish third or fourth, they somehow win a share of the league. And, you know, when his team is the favorite to win the league, they typically win the league. So I think it just says a lot about him. So shout out to Coach K over at Green. Really nice guy, doing good things, especially when you consider they lost quite possibly the most talented player to ever come through Green with Nico Bundalo, who is now at Western Reserve Academy.
All right, well, let me wrap up the show here with my alumni spotlight. I went with Seth Wilson of West Virginia. It has been tough sledding for the Mountaineers, dating back into the summer with different stuff going on. This was not. This was a bright spot for the Mountaineers. They picked up a home win over the Kansas Jayhawks, the number 3 ranked Jayhawks. Seth Wilson was 3 of 3 from behind the arc for 9 points. Added 3 rebounds in just 15 minutes of play. So very efficient minutes for Seth Wilson. They ended a 6-game losing streak to KU in the victory. So shout out to Seth Wilson, former St. Vincent St. Mary's, former Lorraine product. Big assistance there in their win over the Jayhawks. Small school, TJ tried to steal my thunder. But I'm going with the starting lineup for Worcester. Okay, the Fighting Scots. Nick Everett from West Branch High School, Ashton Price from Bay, Jaden Cox Holloway from Richmond Heights, J.J. Klein from Northwestern, and Jameer Billings from Lorraine. Worcester is on a 4-game winning streak with wins over Hiram, Wittenberg, Oberlin, and Denison. They are now 10-8 on the season. So shout out to the entire starting lineup for the Fighting Scots.
I don't know if you guys have seen this stat, but I see it circulate probably once a year on social media. I believe it's like in the last 10 or 15 or so years, Worcester has the highest winning percentage of any men's college basketball team in the country, regardless of division, whether it's Division I, D2, or D3. Like, that's an insane stat to me.
For sure.
So I'm not sure if that stat is still accurate, up to date. I'm sure it probably is. So if one of the listeners can confirm that for me, would appreciate it. But definitely something I see usually around this time every year, and pretty cool.
Man, shout out Jameer Billings. He makes me feel young because I went against him back in high school, and he's still doing his thing at the college level. So making me feel young. We matched up 3 times my senior year. Got him 2 out of 3, including in the playoffs. So congrats to Jameer.
When you say match up, you mean like you had the best seat in the house, right?
Man, you're killing me.
Well, gentlemen, it was another fun show. Don't forget to all those people out there, subscribe, like this show. We love doing it for you.
Give us some damn help with the Alumni Spotlight, man. Our DMs are open
Yep.
for suggestions. Save us some time, man. You guys have no idea how tedious it is to go through all these box scores of all these D3, D2, and D1 games. Help us out, man. Shoot us some bail. You know, we're just trying to live.
Yeah, listen
So
to
I think
listen
it
to the
was
man. Listen to the man.
Tim Smith from Eds tagged me in one of their kids this week. I think it was Devontae Blanton, a kid we've already used this year, I think. So yeah, hopefully send us guys that we haven't gotten so far, because we're trying not to use any duplicates, trying not to repeat any.
Trying to spread the wealth. So,
well, gentlemen, have a great rest of your week, and God willing, we'll do this again next week.
Sounds good. See you guys.